Most people can feel it when someone is watching them. It is that quiet, uncomfortable prickle on the back of your neck, a sudden heavy sensation in the air that makes you look up, only to find someone staring back with a cold, unblinking gaze. Usually, we dismiss it as paranoia, a trick of the mind in a crowded room or a dark street. But in January 2007, for two teenage girls in Arkansas City, Kansas, that feeling was not a trick. It was the only warning they were ever going to get, a silent alarm before a storm that would tear a community apart. Jodi Sanderholm was not just any girl. She was the shining pride of her small town, a vibrant 19-year-old who seemed to excel at everything she touched. Born to loving parents, Brian and Cindy, and a sister to Jason and Jennifer, Jodi's life was a whirlwind of ambition, discipline, and grace. From a very young age, dance was the heartbeat of her existence. She didn't just move to music, she interpreted it with a passion that was infectious. This dedication followed her from Arkansas City High School, where she was one of 4 valedictorians, all the way into Cowley County Community College. Her academic resume was staggering: a member of the National Honor Society, a Kansas State Scholar, and a Kansas Board of Regents Scholar. She was brilliant, but her soul belonged to the stage. As the captain and choreographer of the Cowley Tigerette dance line, she was a natural leader, known for her tireless work ethic and her ability to inspire her teammates to push past their limits. She was studying to become a pharmacist, balancing a demanding medical major with the grueling schedule of a lead dancer. She was focused on her future, on the dreams of graduation, marriage, and a career in medicine. But while Jodi was meticulously planning her bright future, a dark shadow had already begun to overlap her path. On the night of January the 2nd, 5 days before the tragedy, Jodi's best friend Lori was leaving work late at night. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she noticed a light blue Cadillac in her rearview mirror. No matter which turn she took or which side street she ducked into, the car remained glued to her bumper. Terrified, Lori drove straight to the local police station and sat in her car, hoping the predator would move on. She thought it was a sick prank, perhaps someone just trying to scare a young girl at night. But on January 5th, when Lori and Jodi arrived at the college parking lot for a routine dance rehearsal, that same blue car was there again. Sitting inside was 23-year-old Justin Eugene Thurber. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't listening to music, and he wasn't waiting for a student. He was simply sitting there, his eyes fixed on the girls with a predatory intensity that made their skin crawl. What they didn't realize was that this wasn't a new obsession. Justin had been lurking in the periphery of Jodi's life since they were children, a silent stalker who had finally decided that his years of watching were no longer enough. January 7th, 2007 began as a typical crisp Sunday morning in Kansas, but it would end as the day the music died for the Sanderholm family. Jodi woke up early, her mind likely filled with the day's upcoming choreography and her many academic commitments. She dressed in her signature Cowley Tigerette dance gear, a leotard and a black jacket with her name, Jodi, proudly embroidered on the chest. She grabbed her bag, hopped into her Dodge Stratus, and headed to the college for a final rehearsal that wrapped up around 10:45 a.m. Her teammates remember her being her usual energetic self, perfectly normal and focused on the performance scheduled for that evening's basketball game. After rehearsal, Jodi was supposed to head straight home to prepare for a noon appointment, but as the minutes turned into hours, the silence from her end became deafening. By 1 p.m., her mother, Cindy, began to feel a gnawing anxiety in the pit of her stomach. Jodi was a communicator. She was the type of daughter who would always call or text after an errand just to keep her family in the loop. Cindy dialed her number once, then twice, then 10 times. Each call went straight to voicemail, the cheerful recording of Jodi's voice now sounding like a haunting echo of a girl who was no longer there. Brian, her father, also tried to reach her, his concern growing into a cold panic as the realization set in that Jodi was radio silent. Cindy, unable to focus at work, rushed home, praying to see Jodi's car in the driveway. But when she turned the corner, the house stood silent and empty. Jodi's room was exactly as she had left it that morning. The bed unmade, the laundry hamper empty, the bathroom cold. There were no signs of a struggle, but more importantly, there were no signs of Jodi. Cindy began a frantic round of phone calls to every friend and dance partner she could think of. The news was always the same. She left the college after rehearsal and hadn't been seen since. When she missed her noon appointment and failed to show up for the evening's major dance performance, the family knew the unthinkable had happened. At 6:00 p.m., Brian and Cindy stood in the police station, their voices trembling as they reported their 19-year-old daughter missing. The quiet streets of Arkansas City were soon flooded with flashing blue lights and search parties, but the girl who lived life at her own pace had vanished into a void that seemed to swallow every clue. The investigation into Jodi Sanderholm's disappearance moved with a speed rarely seen in missing persons cases, primarily because the police knew Jodi's character. She was not a runaway. The first major break came when Lori, Jodi's best friend, told detectives about the man in the light blue Cadillac. This led them straight to the door of Justin Eugene Thurber, a man whose criminal history was already a mile long, including drug possession and robbery. When investigators pulled into the Thurber driveway, their hearts sank. There sat the light blue Cadillac Lori had described. Inside the home, they found something even more suspicious. A pair of white sneakers sitting on a towel, freshly scrubbed and still damp to the touch. Justin's father claimed he had helped his son clean the shoes because they were caked in thick, dark mud. Justin offered a convoluted alibi, claiming he had gone to Winfield with friends and their car got stuck, forcing him to walk 30 miles back to Arkansas City on foot. It was a story full of holes, and the police weren't buying a word of it. They shifted their focus to the Kaw Wildlife Area and Cowley State Fishing Lake, remote locations where the terrain matched the mud on Justin's shoes. In the damp earth of the wildlife area, they found the smoking gun, 2 sets of footprints. One set perfectly matched the soles of Justin's freshly washed sneakers, and the other, smaller set indicated a woman being forced through the brush. As they moved toward the lake, the scene became a nightmare. Scattered in the dirt were Jodi's personal belongings, mail addressed to her home, her dance shoes, her wallet containing her driver's license, and her tigerette jacket. It was as if someone had discarded the remnants of her life in a fit of haste. On January 9th, a dive team was called to the murky depths of the Cowley State Fishing Lake. As the crane pulled a vehicle from the water, the heart-wrenching sight of Jodi's Dodge Stratus confirmed their worst fears. The windows were smashed, and the interior was ruined by the silt, but Jodi was not inside. The search intensified in the surrounding woods, and under a pile of heavy branches and decaying leaves, they found what looked like a discarded mannequin. But as the officers drew closer, the devastating truth was revealed. It was Jodi. The vibrant, talented dancer had been silenced and hidden away in a place so desolate that only the most dedicated search could find her. The forensic evidence against Justin Thurber was overwhelming. Despite his attempts to clean his shoes and sink Jodi's car, DNA analysis found his genetic profile inside the vehicle, and CCTV footage from the college parking lot captured the chilling moments of the abduction. The footage showed Justin waiting in his Cadillac, a predator watching his prey and then following Jodi as she drove away. It was later determined that Jodi had actually made it all the way to her front yard. As she stood by her mailbox, steps away from the safety of her home, Justin ambushed her, forcing her back into her own car and driving her to the remote lake where he carried out a prolonged and brutal attack. But the most sickening revelation came during the trial. Justin hadn't just noticed Jodi that week. He had been obsessed with her since childhood. Witnesses testified that he would lurk in the shadows of her dance studio and follow her home when they were just kids. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was the culmination of a decade-long stalking campaign by a man who saw a young girl not as a person, but as a prize to be hunted. Justin's defense team tried to play the card of intellectual disability, claiming he didn't understand the gravity of his actions. However, the prosecution fired back with evidence of his high IQ, his college attendance, and the calculated way he disposed of the evidence, sinking the car, washing the shoes, and hiding the body. He wasn't disabled. He was evil. In February 2009, the jury found him guilty of capital murder. The courtroom was thick with tension as the judge handed down the ultimate sentence, death. Yet, 17 years later, the justice Jodi's family was promised remains a hollow victory. Justin Thurber still sits in a Kansas prison, utilizing every possible legal loophole to appeal his sentence while living off the taxpayer dollars of the very people whose lives he shattered. Kansas has not carried out an execution in decades, leaving families like the Sanderholms in a state of perpetual limbo. Jodi's dreams of being a pharmacist and a wife are gone, replaced by a legacy of caution and a reminder that evil often hides in plain sight. Her story is a plea to live in the light, to cherish every moment of safety, and to never ignore the feeling of being watched. Because for Jodi, the dance ended far too soon, leaving a family to weep while the world keeps turning without its brightest star.